Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted, the Friday Roundup edition. This is episode 296. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's June 2nd, 2017.
Okay, George, I got my first couple complaint emails from viewers. They say we spend too much time talking about the weather, so this week we're cutting the weather out. Even though it's awesome outside, I won't talk about it. But we have about, 4, 5, 6 topics to talk about. So this week we're going to have a Friday roundup where we have all the small things that we really don't get a chance to talk about in the news because, well, you have to do 17 minutes to keep people interested. But there's always those 3 and 4 minute stories that eventually have to come out. And so, George, I'm going to try and compile those for you today. George, well, let's have a little fun. I'm going to trigger you. Hold on. Climate change.
Goodness, climate change. Did you know the world is ending?
It's all over. It's all over. No,
Al Gore was right.
Yeah, Al Gore.
Polar bears have... Last night, all the polar bears left in the Arctic drowned because the global ice sheet melted last night.
Well, I got to say, I saw about 1 million snowflakes on the internet. Poof, just melt. But it's interesting times to see how social media has really intensified hyperboil from both sides. You know, left or right of an issue. There is no middle ground anymore. I think we've lost that middle voice of negotiation, talk, reason. Everything is anti-science, pro-science, pro-consensus, anti-consensus. It's all one way or all the other, and it doesn't serve our society well, George.
But you know, Kevin, I was really floored by something. I've got to tell you, I was shocked. The Episcopal Church's presiding bishop put out a statement that was more reasonable, more rational, more adult than any Democratic leader or media talking head. Michael Curry, who doesn't agree with President Trump's decision, said, well, we can disagree and we can work for the best of the country as a whole. I mean, we have grown-ups now at the Episcopal Church.
I think he left out the exclamation points at the end of each sentence. No, as far as, you know, I'm sure there's a majority of people in the leadership at 815 who are screaming mad about this, but the voice who signs the press release had a calmer response.
Well, it's just night now. As you have pointed out many times, and I've not really argued against this, Michael Curry does hold very, very, very liberal, progressive theological opinions, which I don't agree with many of them. But he's not as aggressively nasty as his predecessor was. Catherine Jefferts Schori just had a way of, starting denominations, splitting churches, disposing bishops, accusing the Apostle Paul of being unkind to a woman possessed by an evil spirit because that was male hierarchy and hegemony over a woman by casting out the evil spirit. Oh, Kevin, I miss Catherine Jefferts Schori. I really do.
Yeah, I as journalists, we know what really works. When I heard Donald Trump was going to run for president, as a journalist, I was very pleased. When I heard he won presidency, as a journalist, not left or right, but just from a employed journalist perspective, awesome. And Michael Curry is no Catherine Jefferts Schori, and I want him to take that as a compliment, even though we prefer the wickedness that his predecessor offered.
You're just not as entertaining. I'm sorry. You're acting like a spiritual leader who leads a church that has divided minds on this issue. I mean, who knew that there were still bishops with authority and wisdom? I mean,
well,
compared to the Church of England spokesman for environment, Nicholas Holtham, the man is a clown, and he In other words, but his words were no different from any commentator on CNN or Al Gore or John Kerry, that the end is near, this is awful, this is this is that. No, no nuance, no sophistication. And his faith in climate change seems to be stronger than his faith in Jesus Christ. But hey, who am I to judge?
Nah. Well, no, we are to judge, but don't worry about that. Let's go on to that was kind of our buffer topic. What's our first? I had you write that on the list. What's the first topic?
First topic is GAFCON has released a statement today saying that they're going to hold a press conference after the Scottish Synod in this month in June, and in Edinburgh. And if Scotland goes ahead and does its second vote on authorizing gay marriage, they will then announce the name of their flying bishop for Scottish Anglicans.
Well, it's interesting. This is something they said back at GAFCON too, that they're going to try and offer an alternative on the shores of the UK, and this is one of those where the UK obviously has not changed its ways. We always knew Scotland was going to be the most progressive and leaders down the highway to hell, and this is GAFCON's chance to say stop. We have an alternative way forward. There's no salvation through Canterbury. We have a flying bishop for you. Any hints to who that may be?
None whatsoever. They've kept very mum. And it's all very English in that a lot of knowing winks and nods and looks and snorts. And we're not going to tell you Americans, but we're going to hold it close to our chest. But whoever they choose, we'll certainly find out. But I assume it'll be someone from the evangelical mold. Now, lots of names have been floated, but hey, we have no way of knowing who it is.
We don't. It's really a secret society. Basically, those who dip their biscuits in their tea are the ones in the know. Everybody else just is outside the form.
Just a little bit of Anglican history on this point, which I know at least 2 viewers will find fascinating. There were flying bishops in Scotland in the 19th and early 20th century. See, the Scottish Episcopal Church got into the Anglo-Catholic movement in a big way in the 1840s, 50s, 60s.
That's true.
And evangelicals broke with the Scottish Episcopal Church and formed the Church of England in Scotland. And English bishops and Irish bishops would take the train up north. They were flying bishops, and that they would take the Flying Scotsman up to Edinburgh and provide episcopal oversight for evangelical parishes. And it wasn't until the early 1920s that this schism was ended. And what we're seeing is that the same parishes that were members of the Church of England and Scotland, where there was alternative episcopal oversight, where there were flying bishops, are now going back 100 years later. We're seeing a repeat 150 years later. I find that fascinating. Things never really seem to change.
I find that fascinating too, because by this report, we have to change our history books. You're saying 70 years before the Wright brothers, we had flying bishops in England. Oh, you can't beat that.
Well, the Flying Scotsman was the train that would go from London.
Okay, all right.
They would be on the Flying Scotsman to go, or they'd come over from Ireland to do it. So, but there's nothing new under the sun, Kevin. There really isn't.
No. Okay, that's story 1. Story 2. What do we got for our topic? Oh, nice. Facebook is currently censoring George.
What's happening, Bishop-elect?
Hold on, you got to repeat that. Facebook censored you for 5 seconds.
Facebook or Skype?
Sorry, Skype.
Or
it's
Twitter.
Friday. This is just Roundup, free for all, and take a sip of Pepsi Friday.
Well, I think the NSA censors finally caught up with us on the global warming thing. And
that's right. We're in so much trouble. All right. So, topic 2.
I'm sorry, topic 3 or topic 2?
Well, topic 1 was we did global warming, and then we did Scotland. What's number 3?
Okay, we've had the appetizer, now the soup. Now you want the main course.
Bring it on.
Okay, the main course, that's going to be Jake Worley. What's happening in the Diocese of Caledonia?
Okay.
Well,
So, well, yeah, let's back up and let everybody know the full story, where he's from and where he was pre-consecrated to go.
well, Jake Worley was elected last month, no, I'm sorry, in April,
Yeah.
Bishop of the Diocese of Caledonia in northern British Columbia. Its see city is Prince Rupert,
Hmm.
which is way up there. I mean, polar bears and Eskimos, that's a
Nobody wears Bermuda shorts up there. It's a different
nobody
climate.
wears shorts. They shave with chainsaws and,
They actually support global warming. It's weird, but yeah.
well, Caledonia is a conservative diocese, and it has a very large, I don't know what you call them in Canada, First People, I think. They're not Native Americans, they're Native Canadians, but they don't say
Okay,
that.
sure.
Indians, they have a lot of Indians. There, we'll get hate mail now from Marla.
It's geoconger@gmail.com because I didn't say that.
Well, my daughter,
Okay, let's work the story. Work the story.
work this story. Okay, Kevin. Jake Worley was ordained in the Episcopal Church in the Diocese of the Rio Grande.
Hmm.
He left and joined the AMIA and the ACNA. He was one of the 700 plus clergy deposed under the Catherine Jefferts Schori regime. Well, like everybody, nobody paid any attention to this. He was licensed by Rwanda, and he served an AMIA parish for a number of years in New Mexico. Then he went up to Caledonia, and the Bishop of Caledonia, Bill Anderson, basically said, we don't need no stinking badges. I don't care what Catherine Jefferts Schori and company have done. You can be a supply priest here for 6 months. He then went to Ireland, served the Church of Ireland for 2 years. And the Church of Ireland said, whatever. We don't particularly care. Then he went back to Caledonia and is rector of the largest parish, or one of the healthiest parishes in the diocese, before he was elected bishop. Now, before the election, his name was submitted for vetting to the other bishops and the process committee, and they cleared him as being eligible to stand for election. He's elected. And then, from what we hear, the chancellor of the National Church in Toronto and the provincial lawyer basically got together, how can we torpedo this guy? And the bishops released a public statement saying, well, he fails under this canon which says you can't hold a view contrary to the teaching of the Anglican Church of Canada for the prior 5 years. To wit, flying, the whole ACNA tech problem of two churches in one place.
Sure.
Well, if they hold that standard, every bishop, pro-gay bishop in Canada, should never have been elected.
Or should be able to hold office. I mean, right now we need to start depositions for those current bishops.
Well, this guy was a representative to General Synod and this guy's as plugged in and is bona fide a priest in the Anglican Church of Canada. His bishop, Bill Anderson, the outgoing bishop, says he's a priest and all this and that. Well, so they gave a public reason that he holds bad views, but the private reason was that, well, he's been deposed, and we really don't know if we can allow that to happen. Now, I can give you example after example after example of priests who have been purported to be deposed under this abandonment of the communion canon, who pop up in other churches happy as can be. Let's take the most prominent example, Henry Scriven.
Perfect
the
example.
Bishop of Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
opposed for abandoning the communion of the Episcopal Church, which he didn't do,
No.
and which he left. He went back to England. He retired as assistant bishop, took a job at the CMS, Church Mission Society, and he was deposed for that by Catherine Jefferts Schori. Well, the Church of England hasn't held that of any mind. He's an assistant bishop in I don't know which diocese, but the purported deposition of Jefferts Schori has meant nothing. So the Bishop of the Arctic and David Parsons, not Donald Parsons, who's the former Bishop of Quincy, but David Parsons,
Yeah.
and Bill Anderson, the former Bishop of Caledonia, have written letters saying this is rank hypocrisy. What is this? This says that you're using sneaky lawyerly tactics to basically torpedo the first the only conservative elected in the last few years.
Yeah,
And
but is not rank hypocrisy the official teaching of the Canadian Church?
well,
Maybe not on
that's,
paper, but
there's a certain type of Canadian liberal smugness. I'm not talking about the people in Caledonia. I'm talking about sort of these people well, let me just engage.
to get us some. You got the Eskimos mad at you. You're going to have the native, the first indigenous mad at you. Now you're going to have all the rest of Canada mad at you.
But there's this wonderful assumption of moral and virtue and superiority that a certain type of Canadian loves to preen and go on and on about. And you find those in the leadership of the Anglican Church of Canada, where the church exists to distribute mosquito nets and to affirm the latest, greatest social craze. And if we get around to Jesus, we'll get there eventually. So,
in fairness,
essentially, it's in limbo right now.
No, in fairness, the first two Canadians I met were Bob and Doug McKenzie. So, I have an appreciation for them. But we're spending too much time on this topic. What's the next topic?
Well, let me just say, right now, the decision of the bishops to say no is final. And so essentially the synod has to go again. And the synod is deciding in Caledonia, well, do we just rerun it like Mark Lawrence? Have a second election, re-elect him a second time.
That's the way to do it.
And basically, so that's where they are right now. They don't know what they're going to do. But it's just a mess. And the Canadian Liberals have been caught out in hypocrisy once again.
Cool. All right, next topic.
Next topic is General Synod in July in the Church of England. There are two issues coming up that are lots of fun. Basically, the Witchfinder General of the Church of England, Jane O'Zane, who is a leading gay rights activist and a world-class scold and blue stocking. Well, I'll stop.
Is there nobody that's not going to be mad at you at the end of this episode?
Well, she has put forward a resolution banning reparative or conversion therapy, or whatever they like to call it, where you go to a psychologist to be assisted with unwanted same-sex sexual desires and attractions.
Or, gender dysphoria or anything, that these doctors are actually trained to help with. It's odd because
this is scientific, there are scientific societies who, for political reasons, have adopted this, and then you can go to Johns Hopkins University and talk to the actual psychiatrists who study and deal with this stuff, and talk to the dozens of people who have been helped by psychotherapy in these issues.
You said dozens, tens of thousands.
Well,
what you'll never hear of in the press is the success rate. We're not telling you 100%. I would say the success rate is about 50-55% for those really interested in pursuing psychotherapy, whether it's trans issues, whether it's gay issues, or whether it's just any other mental dysfunction that you want therapy for. There is a success rate, but it's never reported.
I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret, Kevin.
No.
I'm not a psychologist, but my mother is. My mother is a neuropsychologist.
That's right.
And she was the chief psychologist at the Kansas State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. And so I'd get some really neat stories from my mother about, you think you've got a problem with the parishioner. Let me tell you about Fred. He ate his wife. But basically, my mother tells me that the success rate of traditional psychotherapy is about 50%. So it's reparative therapy essentially has the same success rate within a few points as regular psychotherapy, as does having no therapy at all. So it's just sort of this whole hysteria that you see. And then the other great wonderful issue is the Diocese of Blackburn in 2015, their diocesan synod put forward a resolution asking the bishops of the Church of England to come forward with a transgender ceremony liturgy. So if Fred becomes Ethel, he or she can go into church and have a new naming And so the press in Britain are calling this transgender baptism. Well, it's not right. It's not a baptism because I think that can only happen once.
It can, but boy, you can just call it recreation. I didn't like how God created me, and I'm going to recreate myself. And I'm going to get a new name. I'm going to do what we call state-sponsored cutting, and just change my appearance. That's the new world order, George, and now the church is going to discuss it or adopt it.
I don't. I think they'll reject it because there's a difference between mildly, ignoring this and hoping to go away, which is the Church of England's stance on most things, right?
Yes.
And aggressively pursuing it. If they aggressively pursue it, well, I don't know. I was going to say they'd be held up to ridicule. I don't know how to get any worse.
No, no.
But,
sadly, George,
again, this is another, my personal view. I'm not a neuroscientist. I have I'm an educated layman in this area, but I believe this is a mental illness, gender dysphoria, and to try to inject the church into this. Yes, it should be there to care and offer pastoral support for people, but not to basically say this is a wonderful thing that you're doing, and now you are going to feel better about yourself. Well, it doesn't happen. Many of these people wind up killing themselves after the surgeries.
It's sad. Transphobia, gender dysphoria has a 18% suicide rate. After surgical transition, it has a 26% suicide rate. Obviously, as far as evidence-based solutions go, that does not seem to be a solution. Ironically, some of the fastest growing ministries in this country are all underground and help with detransitioning. There's an active movement to help people who want to detransition. I'm going to provide a little link in the notes about a lady who detransitioned, that you can watch her video as she gives a testimony about that. It's a strange world, and it's amazing how you just have to stand out and you can watch what's going on, but the second you decide to participate, you need to be fully informed and fully ready for the fight, because the press is against you and the world is really against you in this area. George, is there any other topic on your sheet of paper? We're out of 20 minutes here.
No, but I think the thing that I would come away with is, once again, if the church goes down this path, it has lost its focus. The church should not be applauding nor condemning these people, but seeking to give them a relationship with the living God, Jesus Christ. And this stuff is just nonsense.
If you don't believe Jesus is the solution, is the answer, get out of the business, because you're hurting all the rest of us. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Not talked about the weather, but it is sunny and warm and beautiful. The sprinklers are clicking in the
You're going to get us more hate mail. Don't do that. And you've been watching episode 296 of Anglican Unscripted.